Welcome to another episode of The Quiet Part Out Loud. I'm Nuvyn.
And I'm Alex.
And today we are joined by Bonnie Dupont, former executive and tremendous board member, and this year's recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Calgary Influential Women in Business Awards. Welcome, Bonnie.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you.
Yes, so delighted to have you here.
Thanks for being here. I'm just going to jump right in to your nomination for the Lifetime Achievement Award. You are widely known as being, the first female executive, the first board director, board chair. So I'm just going to actually read part of your nomination. First woman elected to the board of Bird Construction, first woman appointed to the chair of the board of governors at the University of Calgary, first woman elected president of the Calgary Petroleum Club. That's just the first three. There are probably a dozen. So can you talk to us about the intentionality of that? Did you intend to be the first woman in all of these boardrooms? How did that feel for you? And was it a barrier, or was it just something you welcomed with open arms?
Well, it's a good question, Alex. And, I have reflected on this. Was it intentional? No, it wasn't intentional. And when I think back to how those events occurred, there's a theme in that process. And the theme, I think, is that sometimes you're fortunate enough to have people see things in you that you yourself don't yet recognize. And so in most of those instances, I was approached and asked if I would consider the role, and I did, of course, and it turned out well. But to say that I actually plotted that out, I think would be inaccurate. So I was very fortunate in having people in my life and people that I knew through various networks and through various jobs that I had done who recognized that I might be able to make a contribution in those areas.
When people think about and discuss women in leadership and climbing that corporate ladder or the corporate lattice, invariably, your name always comes up as, to Alex's point, one of the first. Talk us through some of those experiences being the only woman on an executive team or being the only woman in the room. That must have been a very different experience than what women experience now in the workplace.
It was, and I would say that at times it was daunting. There's something about female energy that is very comfortable in those settings. And if you're the only woman in the room, you don't have access to that other female energy. And so there were times that it was quite daunting, and there were times that it was lonely. Mm-hmm. But there is a but on this. One of the things that I was very intentional about, to go back to your use of the term, Alex, was getting other women to join me in those circumstances. And so, we talk about the Petroleum Club being the first woman on the board. Well, the next year, I made sure there was another woman there. And the year after that, there was another one. And pretty soon, I wasn't the only woman.
Yeah.
And so it worked that way on most of the boards that I served on as well. I might have been the first, but I worked hard because those talented women are everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate to know many of them and have networked and worked with quite a number. So I was able to bring some other women to join me in that situation.
There are so many women who have attributed their career success because of your trailblazing leadership. And I've heard many times people say, I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for Bonnie Dupont. And I think that there's that moment of reflection also to think about the impact that your career has had on the trajectories and the lives of so many others in our community.
Well, that's a very flattering way to be seen. But really, those women that moved up because they had what it took. I might have been an example to look at, as I mentioned, I did some active things to bring women along, but there are so many women who are competent and capable and deserving of those roles that I don't think they should give me too much credit.
I don't know about that. I think that's very humble of you to say. But when you think about, uplifting other women, and you may have been the first, but you certainly weren't the last
No.
around the table. What was the role of mentorship or sponsorship in your career journey? Were there men or women who said, you belong at this table, and I'm going to help you get there?
It was huge, Nuvyn. It was huge to have a sponsor and a mentor. And unfortunately, my first really serious leadership role was 45 years ago. And there were no women for me to reach out to and to be mentored by. So I did get my sponsorship and mentorship from men, and they were phenomenal.
Mhm.
They were very clear in their guidance, some of them. They were very helpful. They were directive. They were sometimes humorous, but yes, I mean, it was huge. And really, it was that experience, and as I say, it started 45 years ago, that led me then to believe that that was really an important role for me to play, to be a mentor, to be a sponsor, and to be, actively involved in promoting other women's careers. I could not have survived without that. I could not have.
I'm going to ask about a defining moment in your career journey. Is there something that comes right to mind that you say, like, this changed the trajectory of my career, or it changed how I thought about myself? Is there something you can share with us?
I can tell you about an experience I had in my first managerial role, my first leadership role, really. I was asked to do the work to prepare for the bonus payments. And I was very diligent. I looked at the performance reviews, I looked at the metrics, and it was a unit of about 8 people that were eligible for bonuses. And when I had done all the work, I took it to my boss, who was a VP. I was not yet a VP. And I showed it to him, and he looked at it, and he said to me, "Why would you give so-and-so," it was a man that he was questioning, "why would you give him this amount? His wife is a teacher. He has no children." And it stopped me in my tracks, because my degree had focused on program planning and evaluation. I was all about the metrics. I was all about the evidence. I was all about making sure that things were in alignment for the bonus payouts. Anyway, 45 years ago, remember, right? It wouldn't happen today, I hope. But it really changed a lot in me. First of all, it made me aware that there's tremendous bias, and it's not only against women.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just bias in everything and every place you look. But also how I really believed in being thorough, and really believed in looking at the evidence, and really believed in the data. And I argued with him, and I didn't win the argument with him, but he lost the argument with the president. I didn't go to the president, of course, but it turned out the way I felt it should have turned out, and it was a shock to me. It was first management job, first real leadership role, and not necessarily having my good work recognized in the way it should have been. Now, that all changed over time, and I continued on the path of doing what I thought was the correct way to do the job, and subsequent jobs. But it was a turning point for me. I hadn't realized that was perhaps the way it worked in the corporate world.
Are there things that you would have done differently? Like when you look back on your career, either, what advice would you give your younger self in those roles?
There isn't a lot that I would have done differently. I think that, one of the things that I am is I'm anxious. I have a lot of anxiety, and it's anxiety about doing the right thing. It's anxiety about doing it properly, and so on. And early on in my career, I learned that anxiety could be used in the service of learning. And so I decided to take on things that made me anxious. If I felt anxiety, I knew I was going to be challenged. I knew I was going to have to work harder. I knew I was going to learn something. And so, there were times when I'm sure my friends and colleagues wondered, well, why would she take that on? Why would she do that? If I felt some anxiety about it, I knew that I was heading in the right direction. So I don't think I would do it very differently. I might do my master's degree earlier, some of those kinds of things, but I don't think I would change my career choices.
You've had such an interesting career that has spanned really diverse industries, and now not only now in your board work, but in your nonprofit work, it is very dynamic.
Yeah.
And it's and far-ranging. And I'm curious, what sparks your curiosity about, like, that's something I want to take on, or
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's curiosity.
It's curiosity.
Yeah. It's curiosity and wanting to try some other things. I grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan. And so I really enjoyed the agricultural sector. It was right up my alley. But I had also had a very early career experience in the energy sector, and so that fit for me too. But I am driven by curiosity. It's hard for me to say no. It's hard for me to say, oh, I don't want to do that, because if it's got anything of interest to me, I'll want to get involved. So yeah. It's curiosity. It really is.
I was going to ask you how you make your decisions, but you just told us that you have a hard time saying no.
I have a hard time saying no. And I also like new things. I like to try new things. And that's curiosity. That's also the anxiety thing. Mm-hmm. If it's new, I get a little excited. And it's it's a combination.
And how do you follow your curiosity now? I know you sit on a number of boards, but what does that look like these days versus when you were in an executive role?
Well, I mean, now I'm doing some different things for myself. I have the time. I've come off my last board last year. I retired from my last board. And so I've got personal time, and I'm doing a lot of research. And I'm doing historical research on my family and on my partner's family. I'm doing genealogy. There's just a ton that's out there to be discovered, and I'm enjoying it. I'm immensely happy doing it. So that's how I'm spending my time, and travel. But we satisfy our curiosity by seeing new places. It's great.
That's a good journey to be on. When you think about your career and those defining moments that we talked about earlier, I want to ask you about some of the challenges. And when I think about what you must have, experienced being, the first or the only, and that perseverance is kind of the word that comes to mind. Tell us about some of those moments throughout it where, you just you had to fight, you had to earn your, spot and maintain it.
Your place at the table.
Yeah.
Well, and there have been a number of those where it was clear that there were people in the room who did not welcome a woman in the room. They just weren't comfortable with that. And, I had an experience where I was looking for a role. I was looking for a promotion, and I was told flatly that the organization was not ready for a woman vice president. The organization wasn't ready. I think the individual who told me that wasn't ready. But, what do you do? My sense was you didn't pack up and leave an organization because of that, because you know that leadership changes and you know that the times change. And in fact, they did, and the promotion was available. But, you stand your ground. You say, okay, I see it differently, but I don't walk away. The support system is so important in those situations. You turn to your friends, you turn to your network, you turn to your family, and you get the support you need, and you carry on. I think in every role that I've had on a board or in an organization, I know there have been disappointments. There have been days when you didn't feel valued. I didn't feel valued. There have been times I have cried in the ladies' washroom in the cubicle because I was so disappointed or so frustrated. But you don't quit. You don't leave. You integrate that experience and you move ahead with it.
How did that work ethic and ethos and dedication shape your role as a mother?
Well,
when you think about the example that you've set,
yeah, you'll have to ask my daughter,
right?
Because she's if people saw me as driven, multiply that. Right. But I think I was a good mom, and I think she feels that I was a good mom. I showed up. Mm-hmm. I navigated parenting with career, and she turned out to be magnificent. And so, it was a balancing act. I will tell you that when I had my daughter, I lived in the same town as my mother. And I was blessed, truly blessed, to have a caregiver who adored that baby. So my daughter was taken care of by my mother for the first 6 years of her life until she went to school. And she had the best of care. So I was very lucky.
That support structure is so critical.
Unbelievable. It is a unique privilege to live in the same place as your family.
Unbelievable support structure, as you say, and not many women have it.
Right.
It's rare. it is really rare.
And so what other kind of community have you built around yourself? I imagine being executive chair, board member, it can be kind of lonely. So what kind of structures and community do you lean back on when you kind of feel that need?
Well, and through the latter years of my career, which was mainly board work. I mean, I went full-time board work after I retired from Enbridge. I gradually did add women to the boards that I was on where I had the ability to do that. And not only had those women as my support system, but had women that I had worked with and had worked in other corporations and other organizations around Calgary as a friend group and as a network. And so some of those women will be at the gala, of course, and those are women that I rely on and keep in close touch with to support me. And I offer support to them. These are mutual relationships, but definitely nothing like those friend groups and like that close network of women. And I will say that as my career grew, I watched the careers of other women growing in this city. And so there is, and you know this through the work you do, there is quite a contingent of accomplished women in senior roles in Calgary. It's gratifying to see. I don't know if other cities have it quite the way we do here.
Yeah, I agree with you. And in very non-traditional sectors, right?
Exactly.
Like if you think oil and gas or transportation or mining that is a point of pride that
it should be.
We don't recognize as often as we should.
No, that's right.
When I moved to Calgary from Washington, D.C., you were my board chair at the University of Calgary. And yes, so I remember like my first board meeting and oh my gosh, no one runs a meeting like Bonnie. It's like, no, but you walked through the agenda, like that focus, that determination. What are we here to discuss? The whole, nose in, fingers out, and the university is a very complex, institution, ecosystem, multiple stakeholders. Yeah, that was an experience. I learned a lot from you.
I remember when you were hired and how thrilled we were to get you. So I do recall that.
It was an awesome journey.
Yeah. One of the things I want to say about leadership, and it's through experience that I would share this with you. If a person wants to be a leader, and that's a woman or a man, you really do have to be prepared to make decisions that are not popular. You really do have to be ready for that. And, to go to my point about that turning point where it's based on, logic, facts, reason, data, evidence, you take all of that into consideration in hard decisions, and then you call it. You call it and you live with it. And it's not always popular. You don't always end up being number one on everybody's hit parade, but you have to live with yourself. You have to live with your decision. If it's been made properly, you should be comfortable. And I think it's an important point because leadership isn't about the glory. It's not about the title. It's not about, being the boss. It's not about that. It's about being present and being willing to make decisions and to move an organization forward. And that's really how I've lived my career.
And now when people seek you out for that advice and perspective, I know you spend time mentoring, particularly the next generation of female leaders who will continue to thrive and grow and help build our community. In addition to that, a piece of advice, what else do you impart to them?
Stay the course.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give up. Don't let the bumps in the road deter you. And, I've been mentoring a couple of women on Zoom from another part of Canada. And one of them recently was quite discouraged. And, she's 32 years old. And I think back to my 32-year-old self. I mean, I was just getting started. And so, give yourself time.
Right.
It's it's cliche to say it. It's a journey, not a sprint
right.
But it really and truly is. It doesn't happen overnight. And so stay the course.
Mm-hmm.
Keep learning. Let anxiety be part of your learning. If you feel anxiety, it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And keep moving.
Yeah. See how you can kind of use that as your superpower, right?
Yeah.
Because there are attributes of that, that anxiety produces that actually are, if steered in the right direction, can be very powerful aspects of leadership and work ethic.
Well, and if you're feeling anxious, it bears some analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And the analysis will tell you what you need to do. And that will alleviate your anxiety, but also move you forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I've seen a lot on social media and here and there on getting rid of anxiety. I say, welcome it.
Right. Yeah.
Welcome it and use it to learn.
Yeah.
It can be debilitating. I wouldn't say, that you can live with debilitating anxiety, but there is normal
Lean
anxiety.
into the things that make you feel uncomfortable.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's a very good way to put it.
And I think, we with social media especially are so, our attention spans are so much shorter. And I think your comment about, if you're in an uncomfortable situation, let it settle. A lot of people feel like, this organization is not for me. I need to leave. What is your guidance on that? I know that there's kind of a tipping point where this organization is in fact not for me, but leadership does change. And so what would you say in terms of where's the breaking point for letting it settle, leaving it alone, just do really good work, and the decision to maybe I need to look for something else?
Well, I think you're right about that. I think there is a breaking point in a particularly toxic organization. How far do you let that go? I've advised people on this because people have turned to me and asked me that question. I always say, start looking at your options if you're finding it is paralyzing you. Anxiety, if it's too toxic, you can be paralyzed. And once you're paralyzed, you're not doing your best work. So start looking at your options and at least having an idea of what's out there. The thing about looking at options is two things. One is you immediately get some relief. You start to realize that, yes, I do have options. And so there's some relief then from the anxiety. The second thing is one of those options is going to come and offer you a role or is going to open up to you. And then you're going to have another decision to make and more anxiety.
Right.
So it's kind of tricky, it's kind of tricky, but I do agree that, you get to a point where there's toxicity that is almost intolerable, but not that often. I mean, if it's that toxic for you, it's probably pretty toxic for other people. And if that's happening, then you're going to see some pressure on leadership, I would suggest.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, we've interviewed a number of people, current CEOs and those that are now on boards, and when they think about their career journeys, I'm struck by a comment one of our guests said, who said, I wish I had been more patient, right?
Yeah.
Like, I wish I actually hadn't left that company
Yeah.
because I was annoyed
Yeah.
or frustrated, or I wanted something different, or
Yeah.
I felt like I wasn't progressing fast enough.
Yeah.
I wish I had been patient.
Yeah. Well, and that patience, I think, pays off because leadership changes do occur. And so cultural changes follow leadership changes. And I mean, the other thing, and I've said this to a number of people that I've mentored, how do you know that the situation you're going to is going to be any better? And so I'm a bit for sticking it out and riding it out to see if there will be some changes and what changes can I make for myself. It's not cut and dried that a new, it's a little bit like relationships. People leave relationships thinking it's going to be better. Well, they take themselves with them.
Right.
And that's the thing about work. You take yourself with you. An author by the name of John Kabat-Zinn wrote a book. It was a very interesting book. And the title was Wherever You Go, There You Are. And it's true. You're looking for something to be better. You're looking for a rescue. And you're the same person
Right.
going into
Yeah.
that situation.
Great point. Mm-hmm.
What gives you hope for the future? Like, either through the mentorship that you are doing and leadership guidance that you're providing now. What inspires you about the next generation?
I have a lot of hope because of some of the men that I meet. And I think that men have come a very, very long way in the last couple of decades. And, when I talk about 35 years ago or 45 years ago, when I was starting out, 1981, that was the dark ages in many respects. I mean, we didn't have maternity leave at that time.
Yeah.
And so I see real change in men. I see men really coming along. And I don't see them shifting necessarily because they have to. I see them shifting because they see the advantage and the value that women bring to all kinds of organizations. So, I feel very much more optimistic about the future. Where I feel a little less optimism is in some of the changes that we've seen in our neighbors to the south and some of the legislative changes. And that, I think, is unfortunate, but who knows how long that will last. I mean, it may not be a long-term situation. I'll just tell you a little anecdote about the Petroleum Club.
Yes.
When women were first admitted to the Petroleum Club, there were a group of men who were objecting, and they were objecting strenuously. And one of them, there had to be, or at least there was an examination of the Constitution, and one of them felt so angry and upset that he called a colleague of his, a friend of his, who happened to be a Supreme Court judge, and asked him if it was constitutionally possible to continue to keep women out of the Petroleum Club. That was deep felt animosity to women. That was deeply held negativity toward women. And that was only in about 1992. So think about that. The women were admitted to the club, then women got on the board, women led the club. Not that the Petroleum Club is the be all and the end all, but it's a symbol of Calgary.
Right.
It's very symbolic.
Yeah.
And it moved along.
Yes, indeed, it did. Yeah.
I see you're speaking there next
We go
week.
there frequently.
I am. Yes.
We take up lots of space there.
We do.
Yeah.
We do
Yeah.
a lot.
Well,
there.
you wouldn't have been able to go there in the early 90s. And in fact, the woman who was the Minister of Energy was not allowed to enter the club at the front door. She gave a speech in Calgary. She was the Minister of Energy federally. She had to go in the back door.
Yeah. And, you know, when you look back, like it's like we were all, I mean, alive then. I was going to say,
I know.
like,
I know.
this isn't, you know, like the suffragist movement.
No, it's not the suffragettes. It is not. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So men have come a long way,
They
haven't
have
they?
come a long way. And the ones that didn't come along are, you know, a lot of them are gone now, but they've come a very long way, and they've been wonderful. Many of them have been wonderful supporters of women.
Yeah. And their role has changed too, right? Like if you think about how much more active they are in whether it's house caring or raising of children or being, you know, like present.
That's right.
That has evolved quite a bit too from previous generations.
It really has.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, we are delighted that we are able to honor you with this Lifetime Achievement Award for the tremendous ongoing outstanding impact that you've had, not only in various corporate and nonprofit and community sectors, but in the lives of so many leaders that we have in our community now.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the award. I was thrilled to get the call, and I'm thrilled to be included. And I wish you the very best. I think this is such an important program.
Yeah.
Such an important program.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to The Quiet Part Out Loud. The Quiet Part Out Loud is produced by Access Connects and brought to you by Oh wait, is there a sponsorship opportunity there? Learn more at accessconnects.com.